I'm seeing a lot of these, this Star Trek wasn't made for you. It's always been progressive. Where have you been? It's like, okay. One, you call us gatekeepers? That is gatekeeping of the highest order right there. You start thinking, it wasn't made for you. No. It also shows you don't understand Star Trek or television for that matter. And also to realize that what progressive means now is a far cry from what it meant back in the 60s or even in the 80s. But first, let's start off the fact that Star Trek was a network television show. The point was to get as large an audience as possible. You weren't considered safe unless you were pulling in 20 million a week. This is back when the population was maybe 180. And that's one thing Star Trek, it brought in a decent amount, but not enough to really hit that high watermark that 20 million he was going for and secure the future. Because, yeah, they were not the rating disaster of legend, but it wasn't enough to justify the cost because it was a very, very expensive show. And they were pinching every penny to make it scream. But also, yes, there were quote unquote progressive in messages and imagery in there. The fact you had a multi-ethnic crew. That said a lot. Then the point was not to hammer it over your head. Look, hey, here's our black communications officer. Here's our Asian helmsman and our Russian, navigator. And here's our drunken engineer. No. It was like, to pull another show at the time, I Spy. Robert Culp told Bill Cosby a thing about how they're going to deal with the race issue is by not dealing with it. They were just going to treat it like, oh, here's my friend, I forget what your name was, but so he's black. So what? What's odd about that? And just challenge the other side. What's wrong with it? It's perfectly normal. That was the big statement right there. There was nothing abnormal about having this multi-ethnic cast around you. Another show, and again, Star Trek was not unique in that. Look at I Spy. In '67, Diane Carroll was the lead in Julia, her own sitcom. Mannix had a black secretary. Nothing unusual about that. It's like they just treat it like perfectly normal, and that's the big statement right there. This is perfectly normal. You don't understand that. You're behind the times. And it was a time when progress did need to be made. Yes, the Civil Rights Act had already passed, but you had to clean up afterwards. The things that didn't comply with it. You pass the law, and then you start getting everyone to fall in line. And the 80s, there was still a few other things that caught up there, and by, frankly, the late 90s, everyone had pretty much come along. Institutionalized racism, despite the protestations, is a thing of the past, at least was. You got a few holdouts here and there, but as government policy, it was gone. We had pretty much gotten there where nobody gave a shit what race you were, or even who you were going to bed with. And that's when progressivism had to change, because the professional agitators, they were suddenly looking at possibly being out of a job. And this has been warnings going back. Booker T. Washington talking about, he's like, beware of these race hustlers type thing. People who make their living by stirring up, this kind of crap. Because that's how they make their living, is by, causing fun. As long as they're still going, there never will be, real equality, because they have to keep stirring things up. That's what Obama was. The race issue had been put to bed for the most part. He dragged it up and set us back like 50 years. And despite that, I would note that he was elected to 2 full terms. How racist are we? Clarence Thomas is not the first black, judge in the Supreme Court. Thurgood Marshall beat him by, a few decades there. And Ketanji Brown Jackson, we not only got a black female, we got a moron up there. She's the legal acumen of a freaking post toasty, But it's no longer progressive now. Now it's agenda driven. Yeah, and now it's, well, if you don't, it wasn't meant for you. Again, Roddenberry was quite aware. Half the audience is Republican. We need those viewers too. You're not going to get anywhere by pissing them off. And even he's, it's important to get messages, but it's also important to just kick back and have a little fun once in a while. Every episode doesn't have to be some kind of sermon. Not everyone has to. Where's the message in the Trouble of Tribbles? Beyond just don't introduce animal, don't mess around with Mother Nature type of thing. But for the larger parts, I guess, and not every episode was a big sermon from on high about thou shalt not do this and that. Some of them were just a little bit of a romp. A piece of the action was just a farce. Right? But it goes in the thing of, kind of paraphrase a bit from, from Roddenberry's own, The Omega Glory. Star Trek was not written just for the Coms, but for the Yangs as well. It must appeal to everyone, or it means nothing. Do you understand? So don't give me this. It wasn't meant for you. Bullshit. It wasn't meant for me. I've literally watched it since I was a toddler with my dad when it was on NBC. I think the show probably had a bigger influence on me than my own parents. Okay, so don't tell me it wasn't made for me. I'm the product of that show. And I know when it's not working right and when it's wrong. And John De La Rose put up a thing that another guy's put it to a thing. Is this show being written by ChatGPT? And there's some good indicators. Yeah, it is. It's pulling surface things together of this here and that and this lineage here and that one and put it together. It makes no freaking sense because there's nobody minding the store. So we're checking that out, Aaron. But not for me. Fuck you. It was for it made for everybody. That was again. It's become a mantra. Star Trek wanted you to think. It didn't tell you how to think. And that's what the current shows are trying to do. They're trying to they're trying to school you how you must think this or you're not a real thing. It's rather heartening seeing how many conservative Star Trek fans are coming out of the woodwork. And even Stephen Miller, advisor of the president, and they post a picture of him and as a kid in a Star Trek uniform. Okay? So, instead of thinking, well, how can you be conservative? How about thinking about how, why are there conservative Star Trek fans? What is it about the show that appeals to conservatives? And no, Brian Fuller, it's not because of the fascist Starfleet command, You can go fuck yourself with the Lincoln log for that one, little dipshit. It has nothing to do with that. And again, I've done videos on that before, but it has to do with the fact that you look at this at the environment that Star Trek presented. It's a post-scarcity, where energy is not a problem, resources are not a problem, and people are allowed to live their lives. And as such, it's like conservatives are fine with that. The thing about fascist, you don't know what a fascist is. Look at fascists. Look at the Biden administration. That's fascism. Where government tries to stick the nose in every facet in your business and try and ban people from what they say. No, jailing opponents. Pulling a few strings in there to get them killed. That's fascism. You think lowering taxes and reducing regulations and letting people, live their lives and not that's the exact opposite of fascism. Trump may have the manners of a longshoreman, but he is certainly not a fascist. He's the opposite of it. I just did a little schooling on himself on what the hell you're talking about. But no. So again, it's like Star Trek was meant for everybody. as many people as you can, again, to bring as many people to the table as possible, to broaden the conversation. And again, the old show would present both sides and then said, you make up your mind. You can tell what our stance is because, again, not everyone and their uncle was against the war, but you had Kirk actually arguing in favor of maintaining engagement. We can't just pull out. We can't exactly arm the South Vietnamese with nukes either. We got to play this stupid little balancing game or everybody dies. And again, everyone on that, from Roddenberry on down to the guy who swept up afterwards, against that war vehemently. But that's not the message you got from a private little war. You said it was a bad war, but we're stuck in it. We need to make the most of it, make the best of it. And I know. And again, you present both sides of the argument. And you do it and fairly and intelligently. You don't just put up a straw man argument. Oh yeah, here's our fascist. You're against him, right? No, that's not the way it works. You're going to put what the other side believes. You put up what they actually believe, and not your caricature of what it is. You don't do the Mark Ruffalo version of Trump. You say what is Trump actually in favor of that? And then also, there was no Star Trek analog to LBJ during the war. Or Richard Nixon. You didn't bring in someone because when they brought in Stacey Abrams, that's it. You've permanently jumped the shark now. That's when people really stop listening to anything people had to say. Because it was bad enough with Discovery ramping up, hadn't even aired yet, and they're already describing the Klingons as the equivalent of Trump fans. It's like, well, fuck you too. Why should I tune in if this is the way you think of half your audience? And yes, it was half the audience. At a time when you needed every pair of eyeballs you could get your grubby little mitts on to watch this show. You don't start off by alienating half the fucking country. These people are idiots, okay? Again, thankfully, word is, it's like, apparently, word has gotten out that season 2 is already canceled in Academy. No, we're not going to finish it. We'll finish airing year 10, and that's it. It's already wrapped. They've finished production. They're gone. It's been a lot. There's no going back and fixing things. So hopefully, we'll return to proper Star Trek sooner than later. I mean, put this idiocy. It's really started kicking off with JJ. It's gone. You're not on. It's not for you anymore. We've moved on. You old fossil. Because that's whenever, and then it really started kicking in. I'm reminded of Roddenberry's lectures. When his lecture in the 70s, and talking about what was it that made Star Trek so damn. And I got a video of it. It's in there, but the Star Trek phenomenon, and what it was about this hokey space opera. Of the spaceships and zap guns and a hobgoblin with pointy ears that reached out and touched the hearts and minds of millions of people and became a bit of a cult in some cases. So one, it shows that television has the ability to reach out and influence minds. But what's to keep certain groups or ages from taking a quote unquote Star Trek formula and creating a carefully crafted show to suit their own agenda and pushing political beliefs and doing that way? And he predicted such a move is doomed to failure. Because the secret of Star Trek is not in the show. It's in the audience. They can see through this crap. And they are seeing through it. I think I'm drag that up and start posting that one again. Because it's not working. And the reason why it's not working is because it's stupid. And Star Trek has always been hailed as one of the most intelligent fan bases of all of them. Because it did, directly appeal to. No, we want intelligent people. We're trying to reach out and let them, hey, here's a show for you. You can bring your moron cousin with you, but no, this is a show for you. To, something you can actually gnaw on and feed your brain and think about. But it's like the try and manipulate this thing. The magic is not in Star Trek; it's in the audience. So there is an intelligent life form on the other side of the television tube. So that again. So, but I'll bring that up again and repost that. But maybe put another polish on it. But anyway, for now, I just say chickens are coming home to roost for these people, and they're not liking it. We'll talk at you later.